This morning, we're continuing our series called Pray. Pastor Nate is on vacation actually this week. He was gone last week too. He's at a lake as well this week. I forget what the name of the lake is, but he's somewhere up north having a good time with his family. Much deserved vacation, so send him a message on Facebook, say hey, say we missed you. But we're continuing our series, Pray, this morning. And, prayer sometimes in the church world, like people looking out, we see spiritual life or things that are spiritual in the church as like weird or awkward. Anything that isn't, something you deal with every day is weird or awkward. It's like, oh, that's really weird. Why do they do that? But then those same people are watching shows on TV, Paranormal Activity, and, they have stories about things that have happened in their lives that are spiritual, the things that they've experienced that most people would call, demon-possessed or, scary, or, people talk about aliens and they talk about this and that and that. But when you talk about it in the context of a church, for some reason it becomes very unnatural. It becomes very weird, very, something strange that people don't want to talk about. And they're like, I don't go to that church because they pray and they believe that Jesus actually does, that Jesus was a real human, a real man that is God, and they believe that God answers prayer. Why do they actually believe that stuff? It's not any of that. It's just the universe controls everything. And, for whatever reason, they believe that about the church. And so this morning, we've been talking about prayer the past couple of weeks. If you haven't been here, I just want to kind of go through some more topics on prayer, some things that, seem weird to people that are outside, but maybe not weird to you, and maybe something that you've never really, dealt with or whatever. When it comes to prayer, it's easy to forget sometimes the power of prayer and the fact that when you pray, you're actually talking to God. You're actually, whether you're thanking God for your food, God, thank you, bless this food, our bodies, if you're praying prayers like that, we pray for safe travels for people. People will sit on Facebook, they'll say, hey, say a prayer for me, I'm in the hospital. Say a prayer for me, I've got a job interview. And sometimes people just say that to say it. But what they really mean is, I need God's help in this moment. Can you pray for me? And sometimes we forget that it's not just a nice saying, but we're actually praying to a God that hears us and a God that can change things. And you might, think of it, you don't think of it as super important because sometimes people just throw it around and just you live in the moment kind of thing. Just, say a prayer for me. That would be great. But I believe that prayer does change things. And I believe in praying without ceasing, which, can be a little weird. So in 1 Thessalonians 5:16 through 18, if you've got your Bibles or smartphone, you can go there. There's an app called YouVersion that you can download, and you can get any translation of the Bible. But we're going to read the NLT version this morning. So 1 Thessalonians 5:16 through 18. It says, always be joyful, never stop praying, be thankful in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you who belong to Christ Jesus. And that never stop praying is like, do I seriously just sit there and keep my eyes closed while I'm driving and not pay attention to anything around me and just continually pray to God? But what I think that it means is that it means to always be conscious of God and always to be thankful for what you have and what God's done for you, to be always mindful of the things of God and the fact that everything that we have, everything that we own, everything that we have is from God and is God. God created us, He created the world, and we believe that. And that's kind of what it means to just always be walking in prayer, to always be mindful of God. And, we do things like praying for meals or praying before we go to bed or praying when we wake up in the morning. We do things like that because it gets you into a rhythm of prayer. It gets you into a rhythm to be mindful of God. And they're not just ritual religious things that we do. They're really things that are important. God, I thank you for this meal, because a lot of people don't have a meal. And if you were on the team in Africa, you realize how much we have. And it's good to hear those stories, even if you didn't go, because we get to be thankful for what we have and realize that God has provided so much for us, and to be thankful for that. So it gets you into just this rhythm of being thankful and mindful for God. So those things we do because because it keeps us focused on God. It helps us to stay focused on God. And, there's some prayers in the Bible that are just like outrageous prayers that you wouldn't pray. And what I want to talk heavily about this morning is a bold prayer. And if you've ever read the book Circle Maker by Mark Batterson, and then if you haven't read it, you should read it. If you have read it, I'm going to use some things from that and talk about some things that he talked about. But a bold prayer is a prayer. A bold prayers, they honor God, and God honors bold prayers. So God, this is what he said in his book. God isn't offended by your biggest dreams or boldest prayers. He's offended by anything less. If your prayers aren't impossible to you, they are insulting to God. Why? Because they don't require divine intervention, but ask God to part the Red Sea or make the sun stand still or float an iron axe head, and God is moved to omnipotent action. I knew I was going to screw up that word. So a bold prayer doesn't come without a fight. And let's check out Joshua 10, verse 12 through 13. This is Joshua. He's out in battle. God is doing miracle after miracle, wiping out the army for Joshua. Like, he's there. God is there with him. But he's fighting. Joshua's still fighting. He's going after things, but he says this prayer while he's fighting. On the day the Lord gave the Israelites victory over the Amorites, Joshua prayed to the Lord in front of all the people of Israel. He said, "Let the sun stand still over Gibeon and the moon over the valley of Ajalon." So the sun stood still and the moon stayed in place until the nation of Israel had defeated its enemies. Now, I don't know about you, but I've never prayed for the sun to stand still, nor do I have a reason for that to happen. But God made that happen because God is the creator of the universe. And if the sun stood still, it's really that the earth stopped moving. And I read that the earth is spinning at 1,100 miles per hour. If the earth stopped moving, everything on earth would be whipped and wiped out into the atmosphere, just gone. We would all be dead. Everything would be gone. So it's not just the miracle that the sun stood still or it stayed up in the sky. God protected everything and had his hand over everything and allowed there to be daylight so Joshua could win that battle. And we forget that prayer actually changes things too, because when Joshua prayed, he didn't realize that, God, I pray for the sun to stand still. If you watch the sun, you can't tell if it's moving. So it takes some hours to realize, God, you just answered my prayer. So Joshua prayed the prayer, and then he kept moving forward, and he kept fighting, and he kept doing what he could to make it happen. And then, 24 hours later, he realizes, the sun never went down. God answered my prayer. God really answers prayer. And if you look at Solomon 3, verse 5 through 10, this is Solomon. He prayed a bold prayer. He prayed for wisdom. He prayed that God would give him wisdom. I want to read it really quick, and then we'll talk about it. But that night, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream. And God said, "What do you want? Ask, and I will give it to you." Solomon replied, You showed great and faithful love to your servant, my father David, because he was honest and true and faithful to you. You have continued to show this great and faithful love to him today by giving him a son to sit on his throne. Now, O Lord, my God, you have made me king instead of my father David, but I am like a little child who does not know his way around, and here I am in the midst of your own chosen people, a nation so great and numerous they cannot be counted. Give me an understanding heart so that I can govern your people well and know the difference between right and wrong. For you by himself is able to govern this great people of yours. The Lord was pleased that Solomon had asked for wisdom. And, it's easy to pray a bold prayer like, God, I pray I win the lottery, or God, I pray that you wipe out all my enemies and just do anything I ask. We think of God's a genie, but Solomon didn't pray for that. He prayed for wisdom. He had an unselfish, bold prayer. He didn't pray for riches. He didn't pray for power. He prayed for wisdom to lead the people that God had given to him, the people that God had put under him. And because he did that, God gave him wisdom, and he took care of him. Solomon was and still is the richest man to ever live in the history of the world that is documented. And his prayer honored God. And prayers, this is another thing in the book that Mark Batterson wrote. He said, prayers are prophecies. They are the best predictors of your spiritual future. Who you become is determined by how you pray. Ultimately, the transcript of your prayers become the script of your life. And Pastor Nate talks about this a lot, and this is probably where I got it from. He prays some of the same prayers over his kids every night, and that's kind of what got me into the rhythm of doing that. And I pray for myself, for one, which you should pray for yourself, that God, things I pray for myself, I'm always thankful for what God gives me. I thank God for what he gives me. I ask him to help me be more like Jesus, to give me wisdom in everything that God puts in front of me, and then just to help me to be faithful and to stay pure and help me to go and do the will that God has for my life. If you're anything like me, I love to just dream about things that I could do. I'm like, oh, I want to do that. Oh, I want to start a furniture business. Oh, I want to start a space shuttle business to space. And I don't know anything about space, but I want it. I just start to dream about things, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh shoot, lost track. Where am I? God, where are you leading me? And I try to get my focus back on that. So that's one thing that I always pray is, because I'm a dreamer, I like to just dream about things, even though most of them probably will never happen. I still dream about them, and I have to constantly get my focus back on what God's will is for my life, because God knows better than I do of what's going to be fulfilling to me, to my family, and to his plan. A prayer I have for my kids, and I say this every night. My son, I'm pretty sure, can recite it. He has before. He mocks me while I'm doing it sometimes, which is funny now, but it won't be later. So God, I thank you for Charlie and Ebony. I thank you that you give them to me. I pray, God, that you watch over them. You keep your angels watching over them. I pray, God, that you help them to be brave, strong, and courageous. Help them to love people and to love you. God, I pray that you use them to change the world. And I've been praying, at least God's used them to change the world since Charlie was born, from whenever I can remember. I don't know what that means, but I believe we all have the opportunity to change the world. We think that we have to do something huge and amazing and everyone has to know about it. But every little thing that you do changes the world. Every little decision that you make changes the world. And that's what I pray for my kids, that they will change the world, that they will see the opportunities to do that they will see the need to do that God will use them to change somebody's life. And when you change somebody's life, you change the world for better. And that's why I pray that. And I have a story that I want to read to you that's from a mom who prayed a bold prayer for her kids. And bear with me as I read it. It's not wicked long, it's just a couple of paragraphs. But there's a mother. She prayed a bold prayer for her own child. She was a Christian woman living with an alcoholic husband. Her husband completely hated the fact that she went to church. She told me of a time where her father and her husband were ganging up on her about her faith in God. The two people that should have loved her the most were tearing her apart. They were tearing her apart. She had to stay faithful through all of this. She found herself pregnant with her third child. She should not have been pregnant because of the birth control that she was on. It was basically a 0.01% chance of getting pregnant. She found out that the baby was likely not to survive because of this. They also said if he did survive, he had a high chance of having disabilities and deformities. She had to decide whether or not to abort. She decided to go against her husband's and father's opinion. The next 9 months proved to be a time of hardship. She decided to keep the baby and to not abort the baby. Her husband, at one point, tried to knock her out of a chair, to hurt the baby, to potentially, kill the baby, really. Her dad didn't approve, and he made that known. She continued to pray and believed, not knowing if God would or did answer her prayer. Like I said back when we were talking about Joshua, bold prayers don't come without a fight, and sometimes you don't know if God answered it beforehand. So she continued to pray. She continued to believe God, knowing that that one day she would see her baby boy. And on September 18th, 1986, in the hospital, she delivers her baby boy. She waits in expectancy, not knowing if her boy was alive. And to her surprise and the doctor's surprise, he was. She asked if he has all his toes. Yes. Does he have all his fingers? Yes. Her bold prayer was answered. Her baby boy was perfectly healthy despite what the doctors had said, despite the lack of support in her family. And I bet you there's many people in here that have gone through some of these things. And, maybe this morning you're going through something like this and you're like, why isn't God answering my bold prayer? And why isn't God healing me? Why isn't God taking this away? But I would encourage you to look at it from a different angle. God, my wife and I have had probably 3 miscarriages, and it makes no sense. You're just like, why would you save that baby and not this baby? And it's hard to wrap around. I'm not even going to begin to say that I know why that happens. Like, God is sovereign. God is going to take care of us, and God will work out everything for his glory and for his good. That's the best answer that I have, unfortunately, because we don't control the universe, and we live in a world of sin, and people die, bad things happen. God intervenes. God can change things, but sometimes he doesn't. And I would say that this story that I read is not a story of like to make you think, well, you answered their prayer but not mine, but to be an encouragement to keep praying those bold prayers, because you don't know. This mother didn't know whether her baby would live. And you just don't know what your bold prayers are doing. And, you could pray them for the next 20, 30 years and never see an answer until your last breath. And then you see the answer. And, what is your bold prayer? Some of us have been praying bold prayers for many years. We believe God can do it, but sometimes we think that he doesn't, or that, he doesn't want to. And, your bold prayer sometimes can be an answer. God answers it, but you're not willing to take the next step. So I guess what I mean by that is when maybe you're praying for a new job because your job is horrible. It's unhealthy. God, it's not a place that you want to stay. It's not a place that you can stay. Maybe it's something that's tearing you down. There's just the wrong atmosphere, the wrong place to be. And God's been pushing you to get out of there, but maybe you're just not willing to take that step of faith, to take the pay cut, or to apply for that job that you think you won't get because you're not qualified or you don't have schooling. I would encourage you to not close the doors that God is opening for you, and to try to at least go through them before you count yourself out. And, we pray for God. I pray you restore my relationship with my wife, my mom, my kids, my father, whatever it may be. Maybe God is trying to restore those, but every time you guys get together, you just start freaking out and you start yelling at each other. And the opportunity and door that God opened for you to talk and meet is shut because you've lost control of your tongue and your temper. So to just keep that in mind, that God answers prayers, but sometimes we get in the way of them. And just like we as individuals love to, we have bold prayers. And I don't know what your bold prayer is this morning. I would encourage you to have one. If you don't have one, sometimes we go through life and we don't even have bold prayers. We just think, God, this is good. I have my kids and my husband or my wife, and good to go. I don't really need anything, but God's got so much more for you. And to really ask God, what is a bold prayer for my life, God? What is it that you have for me that I'm not thinking about because I'm letting my insecurities or my fears or things like that hold me back from that? So let God speak that to you this morning, and just be willing to take that step. But as a church, we have a bold prayer too. And, one prayer that we've been praying for, 6 years now. We 6 years ago planted a campus in Dover. We had a church in Barrington. We planted a campus in Dover. Pastor Nate was the campus pastor, our lead pastor now, and we launched it together with like 60 or 70 people, And, a year later, the Barrington, the lead pastor ended up stepping down, and it changed everything. And it's like we had this vision to plant campuses around New Hampshire, and now the lead pastor is leaving. And what is going on? What are we supposed to do now? We had to sell the Barrington building because we couldn't take on both buildings at the same time. People left because the pastor leaves. That's just kind of what happens naturally. God, what is going on right now? You put this vision and this plan into motion, and now it's all getting chopped. And we combined here in Dover. If you know the stories, we've had miracle after miracle of God providing a building and just finances and free heat and free plowing out of nowhere, just random miracles, and we meet here. And the vision and the bold prayer has not changed for us. And one thing that I don't know how much to share, but I'm just going to share it. The bold prayer that we have for this next year, and we want you all to pray with us, is we want to plant a campus. We want to, and we're not exactly sure where. We're considering a little up north, an hour away, so maybe a little bit closer, but we're not entirely sure. So I won't throw any towns yet because we're not entirely sure. But we're going to plant a campus. And when we plant a campus, it's not just so we can have another building, so we can have another band playing somewhere else and just meet and have a country club. It's because we want to plant base camps for ministry. And I don't know if Pastor Nate's ever said those words on stage, but he says it to us all the time in staff meeting. Base camps for ministry. And when you think of a base camp, you go to the base camp, you supply up, you get ready, and then you go back out and fight. And we don't fight like a war, but we fight for people. So we go out into the community and we provide milk, or we're going to bring backpacks, or we're going to go. I don't know if this has been talked about. We're going to have a water gun fight across the street with all the kids, and it's going to be a fight, but it's going to be an exciting fight because we're going to be giving kids that could probably never buy a water gun. They make them out of straws and spit it at each other. Those are their water guns. We're going to go over there and make a difference. You're like, what is that doing? It's showing people that we care about them enough to do something for them. And that's what a church needs to be. And I preached about this a few weeks ago. We need to be a lighthouse and a church that's for the city. And when we pray bold prayers like, God, we want to plant campuses in rural New Hampshire where there will probably never be a church because it's such a small town, and to have a church that's thriving, a church that's doing something for the community, that's what we want to do. And our bold prayer is that we plant campuses all around, not so we can grow and be this huge church, make a church and be like, make the top charts, the fastest growing church in the U.S. or the world. None of that really matters if we're not healthy and if we're not reaching the community. And that's our bold prayer. God, let us plant base camps for ministry, a church around New Hampshire, and change people's lives. Let us be the people that you use to tell them about Jesus. Because if you're new here this morning, you've never been to church, you haven't been to church in a while, we don't have church because we want you to come in here so we can change you. We want you to come in here so you can meet Jesus, the person that saved my life, the person that saved many people's lives in this room. And Jesus is the reason for the season. He is God. And Jesus came to this earth, died on a cross so that we could all live in heaven eternally with him. He didn't come to this earth to judge it. He came to this earth to save it. And if we as a church get in the way of that mission of Jesus, then we're doing something wrong. And we got to reevaluate. So our goal and our bold prayer is that we can see just one more person come to know who Jesus is. And that one way we do that is we plant campuses and we plant churches or whatever you want to call them, multi-site. We plant locations, whatever term you want to use. What they're going to do is all the same thing. We're going to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ, and we're going to do that physically, and we're going to do that with our hands and feet. We're going to make a difference in New Hampshire. I think Pastor Nate said this 3 weeks ago or so, like New Hampshire is now the least church state in the United States, which is like exciting because we get to do it. We get to be here in the least church state we get to be here and be used by God. God didn't put you here because he thought, oh, they don't really need it because no one up there cares about me. He put you here because you are the ones that are going to reach this community. We are the ones that are going to reach this state and this region. We're going to change New Hampshire for the better. And that's my bold prayer. That's our bold prayer as a church. I would encourage you to pray with us and to not lose sight of what we do. We want to be the lighthouse and a church for the city, and that's our bold prayer. And, you know, a bold prayer is when you've done everything you possibly can, and God has to work the miracle. God has to come in and say, well done, good and faithful servant, and bam, and he does the miracle, and you're like, I have no idea how this happened, but we're reaching thousands of people. We're helping thousands of people. People are being fed. People are being clothed. People are coming to know Jesus, all because we decided to pray a bold prayer. And one thing that I read or I heard in a sermon, it says, when God seizes you, you start to move forward with what God has for you. And I would say, let God seize you. You know, sometimes I look at people and, you know, they come to church week after week, and that is awesome. I really think that's great. Maybe you come every other week, whatever it is. That is great. But has God seized your heart to the point where you have to do something and you have to give something or you have to be there for somebody? And let God seize your heart and to give you that bold prayer that you can pray to just move forward with what he has for your life, to see the things that God can do with you.